Okay, hello everyone, and welcome. I'm talking today with Reverend Janice Springer. She is has been a pastor in the United Church of Christ for more than 35 years and is currently Minister of Spiritual Formation at University Congregational United Church of Christ in Missoula, Montana. She's written a number of articles and also another book, but we're here today to talk about her book, I Know We're All Welcome at the Table, But Do I Have to Sit Next to You? Now that's an intriguing title. We have a nice picture across of a variety of people sitting at a table. What I want to ask is, what drove you to write this book?
One day I got a phone call in a major city not too far from where I was at the time. In one denomination, there were many churches extremely diverse in language, even economics, race, theology, very diverse. And they were supposed to be working together, but in fact, they were in open conflict. So somebody called me up and said, would you come to our next meeting and offer some kind of program that would give people resources for getting along? And I said, sure, I'd be glad to. And when I hung up, I wondered why I ever said that, because I had never done anything like that, and I had no idea what I could take to them. But I figured something out, obviously, and it went well that day, and I began to share the material in workshops in, well, different places around the country, actually. And so many people asked for copies of what I had done so they could take it back to their own church that I decided I better put it in a book.
Looking at your own experiences, 35 years as a pastor, I've known enough pastors to know that 35 years has given you a lot of moments in pastoring.
A lot of moments, yes. We won't talk about
I'm sure you understand what I mean by moments. So what has it been in your own experience and background with the church that makes you the one to talk about this? I know you were like, why did I accept it? But afterward, did you figure out why you accepted it? What is it that brings you to this?
The reason I accepted it was one of the Spirit's crazy interference moments. The Spirit does that.
Yes.
I think, well, first I could just say there was a need and I happened to be there. I happened to be the one they called up. It's as simple as that. But I could also say I have been a pastor of a conservative rural church, small rural conservative church, and a large university, very progressive church. And I seem to be able to communicate with people on both of those parts of the faith. And so I was hoping that maybe I could write a book that people on either side of an issue could still use the same tools to get to talk to one another.
When we're talking about diversity here, this is no single topic. You're talking differences of theology, differences of race, differences of economic status, sexuality, all of those differences that make us decide, I can't get along with that person.
Exactly. I think of the book is about diversity, of course, but I really think of it as a book about peace. It's so difficult to get along with somebody whose ideas are threatening or at least contrary to your own. And how can we find some tools that can begin? I don't know anything about how we get along with terrorists or how we keep nations from warring with each other, but I can help us find some simple tools that allow us to stay in community with our cousin who drives us crazy when we talk politics, or our next door neighbor who has very different theology.
There's quite a lot of things that make us, that tend to make us argue. I wonder if a lot of the solutions to the wars between nations wouldn't start, in our own living room at
Yes.
the dinner table or things like that, learning how to communicate.
Sometimes the dynamics are the same, whether it's a small private issue or a great big huge world public issue. The dynamics are kind of the same.
And if we search through, we find those roots for it. So we know that. Well, I wouldn't say we know that. I remember being in a diversity seminar. It was where we had an exercise, and we were supposed to put, what identified us, and also, our faith. And I had that I was a Christian, and I had one of the things that I supported was diversity. And several people stopped me and said, we just really have never thought of those two things as together, that you're a Christian and you support diversity.
How strange.
And I think probably, yes, strange, but also unfortunate.
Yeah, right.
What in your Christian faith particularly drives you to give your time and energy in support of diversity and training about diversity?
That seems pretty simple to me. Jesus commanded me to love my enemies, to love one another, to love my neighbor. That's pretty much it. It's not easy to do, but it's sure easy to understand.
Yeah, the command is pretty clear.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not an invitation, Henry, it's a command.
And it doesn't give us much room, because it doesn't say love the person slightly different than you.
Yeah.
It says love your enemies.
That's right. I don't like it. I wish Jesus hadn't said that. It's not one of my favorite things.
And I would probably want to add in here, and one of my reasons for publishing the book is very simply that not enough people realize that is a command, and that is should be one of the things that characterize us, because we also have, how are people going to know who we are is by love.
Yes.
And that isn't love of somebody lovable necessarily,
Right.
in my view.
I figured that one out, Henry. I can do that. I can love the people who love me and are just like me. So I guess I'm ready for step 2.
Yeah, that's that's the harder part.
It sure is.
And also, I think we should probably bring in John's little comment that, how can you say that you love God and then hate your brother?
Yes.
Brother or sister. Yeah.
Exactly.
All of which tie together in the same thing that you said right at the first.
Right.
I just figured I'd underline it a few times.
Yeah, that's good.
That you got there.
Underline a few times. It's so tempting to ignore it.
The book provides 6 actions. And let me say to our viewers, this is not a theoretical book about theology. There's some background and the why in there, but this is a book about doing.
Yes.
This is a book about doing, and you describe 6 actions in the book, and I don't have them in front of me right now, but what I want to ask you, what do you find the hardest to practice?
Of the 6, Henry, the one I dislike the most is be willing to be vulnerable. I don't like being vulnerable. I'm good at having my defenses and my walls and protecting my feelings and protecting my opinions. But if we're going to really get past what separates us and see into someone else's heart, we have to sometimes be willing to be vulnerable. There are always moments when it's not appropriate to be vulnerable, but most of us go through life defended all the time, and we relate out of our defenses instead of out of our deepest self. And that will always lead to conflict. So that's the one that I find hardest. Be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be. But it would be necessary. Relationship is two sides, at least, with two people, and so that's, how shall I say, I've heard a certain amount of let's make them get along with me better.
Yeah.
and we're, pardon?
Well, when you say relationship is two-sided, it makes me think I can't control what the other person is going to do or how they're going to respond to me. So I can't depend on, I'll do this as long as they respond in this way. I just do what I feel called to do to make some peace between us or to try to understand that person. And I have no control over how they respond.
Well, you have the person who said, who gave that command, love your enemies, did not necessarily get the best of responses.
No, that's for sure.
What was it I can introduce in here? I think it was it Muggeridge that said, Christianity has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and not tried.
Yes, right. Right.
So, and there's something to that.
Yes.
Okay, we're looking at this book could be used with a small group, and I think it's probably, there's value in reading it, but there's individually, but it really calls for a group, I think.
Yes.
To work with it. That's its origin in the seminar. So whether it's a small group or a church, let's say that I would like to use this book, put it into practice in my church congregation. Do you have some recommendations for how you proceed in a church in this way? I'm going to assume that you have some reason other than, hey, I'd like some diversity training. Usually we have some people who aren't getting along.
Right.
And I don't recall any church. I don't recall any churches where I couldn't find anybody who wasn't getting along. So, so how would you?
Conflict in churches sometime, Henry? What a shocking idea.
Yes, it is shocking, isn't it? So, what would you suggest? The practical way to get into the use of the book and to start looking at solutions or actions that we can take.
That's a great question, and I want this information to get out there. So, a large portion, I think about 20% of the book, I don't know, a large portion in the back, in the third section of the book, is detailed suggestions with many different options for how you can use this material in your own setting. If you have 1 hour a week to do this, if you have a 2-day weekend retreat to do this, I give schedules and options for all those different ways. I include worship liturgy for worship to go with the workshop. I include liturgy and prayers and readings from several world faiths as well as Christianity. There's practical hints about setting and material that you need. And you, Henry, have made it possible for people to download free handouts to use for the workshop. So, and I assume that I wrote it assuming that the person reading it did not necessarily have any experience leading a workshop or a retreat like that. So I made it as simple as possible and as detailed as possible, and always giving options to fit whatever that person's setting might be.
Would you have anything that you'd like to say as a concluding remarks on this? I think we've really given people the opening to get started.
I have led this material with close to 400 people now in several places around the United States, in church settings and secular settings. And I always get a powerful response. I'm just eager for the information to get out there and the tools to get out there and the conversations the book can generate to get out there. because we have so much struggle over all the diversity that we're in the midst of, so much struggle with people who are different but live right next door to us. We need to learn better than we've known so far on how to get along with one another.
Okay. Are you available? Do you accept invitations to lead this still?
I love to do that. I accept them if they don't involve a lot of travel. I used to go, did this in 6 or so states around the United States, and I'm not up to too much travel, a little bit. But if I can work out the distance, yes, I'm open to this. I would love to do that.
Okay, we'll include contact information through the publisher if you'd like to contact Reverend Springer about leading or possibly to ask questions. And also, if you are looking to use this book in your church, please email us at Energeon Publications. The contact information will be on your screen. We are happy to send you an evaluation copy for you to use to work out your program in your church to decide what you're going to do. So if you're thinking about using this, contact us. We'll talk to you. We'll provide you the materials and give you every opportunity to look at and evaluate the material. We do that free of charge. So just contact us about that, and we'll be glad to help you get that set up. Thank you so much, and I pray that this will help with a lot of the churches who well, pretty much all the churches who need some help living up. I'm going to say, I don't live up to Jesus' command to love our enemies, and I think pretty much none of us can say that we don't have some work to do in that area.
Well, Henry, I got a book for you then.
Okay, thanks again.